Hello, Twitch.
Hello, Twitch.
Hello, Twitch. Poor Archwizard. Archwizard's not able to attend because it's during class.
I've been pretty lucky about that.
I think people need to get their priorities straight. I mean, class is something that, you're going to do that for a little while and then you're done with it and you never go back. Democraciv is a lifelong commitment. I mean, you never really leave
This is
Democraciv.
temporary.
And
Democraciv is forever.
yeah, I mean, sure, maybe you have to pay tuition to attend class, maybe depending on the class, but you pay for Democraciv in time and your mental health. And it's a much bigger investment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so I just can't understand this.
I'm not gonna say anything to that.
So I take it then it is unanimous that school is a waste of time, Democraciv is not.
Here, here.
Oh, definitely.
Drink to that.
Prost.
Post. Is. Should bring in some people.
Yeah, so we just got the ping. Nice little debate over whether to use Fraps or OBS. By debate, I mean it's like 2 posts a piece. But, yeah. And for this, I use OBS. This morning, I was working on a thing where I played about an hour's worth of Civilization 6 and recorded it talking about how the game mechanics worked. For players that were a little confused by some of the new stuff in the game since Civ 6 won the vote, I just don't feel like editing that. And for some reason, my microphone started picking up a hum, which it's never done before. And so I have an hour of sound.
That
You
is
sure?
not ideal.
No. So I mean, I could re-record the commentary track because I did record it as a separate audio track, but it's a lot of work.
Quick question. Sorry if I sound like shit.
That wasn't a question, but okay.
Quick question. No, I'm saying quick question. Uh, what time zone is this supposed to be like geared toward? Because right now it's what, 1 o'clock Eastern?
Yeah.
Most people are at
Yeah.
work.
Well, the problem was I was trying to find a time that worked in both America and in Europe. And I was asking people in the previous week, not
What area of Europe?
what time worked for everyone, and this was the best that everyone could agree on at the time. Not ideal for me either, but yeah. The kind of the reason why I'm trying to aim for around noonish is because over in like England, and it's even later further in Europe. This is evening. This is like people are starting to go to bed.
Huh. They're 8 hours ahead of us, right?
Uh,
Or I'm sorry, they're 8 hours ahead of PST if I'm
yes,
not
yeah,
mistaken,
yeah.
right?
It's
So
7 hours, I think,
10 o'clock
but
to it's 6 o'clock for them right now.
um,
PM.
something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
I wouldn't say people are, especially not in this Discord, are probably going to bed right now.
right.
Especially, I
Yeah.
mean, two of the
Um, I'm wondering if I should postpone the meeting
plenty of time.
another hour or two. But hmm.
I'm just voicing opinions, I
No,
guess.
it's
So, what? How much of this input that's in this convention meeting, or in the voice chat, how much of that is going into the polls that are being made? How much is going into it? Because if if it's this small group that's dictating a lot of the things that
it's
go into the
yeah,
polls,
that's not good. If it's just 5 people in a room doing everything for what's supposed to be community participation, that's not good.
right,
There's part of me, sorry, does kind of have this cold attitude that, well, you should have been here, but this is kind of inconvenient time. I was hoping we could start doing bi-weekly meetings so that we get this done faster.
right.
So
I appreciate that. I just need to obviously. I mean, I'm at work literally right now, but I'm driving.
you're driving, then yeah. Hopefully this isn't being distracting. Hmm. Well, now I have to think for a.
But anyway, it. Sorry to come off hot,
You
but
didn't come off
that's
hot at
that's how I
all.
feel. So
No. And it's some good points. Gives me stuff to consider.
sounds good. But I gotta fucking call some people and do shit. So
Yeah.
have a good
All
one,
right.
guys. Yeah, thanks.
What be going on here?
Uh, well, not a lot of people are able to make it to the meeting, and so just discussing the scheduling on that. What time is it where you are right now?
Me, it's 6:30.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause I scheduled the meeting because I know we've got a lot of people in Europe that get involved here, and the last meeting took quite a while. So
Yeah.
I was trying to make something that'd be more accessible for everyone, but this also happens to be when people are at work. I had asked last week when people's schedules were more clear, and Tuesday seemed to work last week, but not this week apparently.
I'm okay to. I mean, I'll be here most of the day. I actually have the day off right now, so
Sorry, what the
hanging
fuck is
around.
going on with that Civ 5, Democraciv in Civ 5 post?
Democraciv and Civ 5 post. Did I miss?
Yeah, got deleted.
Oh, none of us are moderators in here. I don't know if the mods are maybe listening, because I don't know anything about deleted post.
Well, I'm waiting till tomorrow, and I'm going to wait and get my results from the poll I put out, asking for, ideally new people, but it seems that people who aren't new have answered my poll. It's not what I was after.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm going to get them and see what the situation is, and write my post for what you call it, the imagery.
Uh,
Can't.
for speaking
Yeah.
of polls, that reminds me, I need to pull up the informal poll. Um,
Without discussing any ideas, we can maybe just kind of look over the poll and analyze it a little bit. I don't think that would be too controversial for spending our time doing that a little bit.
Which one? The the informal one.
Yeah. As long as we're not like deciding things right now without the consent of a larger group.
Do it as an oligarchy. Surprise everybody. Like, oh, nothing happened. Oh, wow. It's all been decided for you? I can't believe
Hey,
that.
it's just to make it more convenient. Feel like people don't really have the time to put into all the work in something like this, so we want to make it
So what
as streamlined.
we've done it
Yes,
for
it's
you.
all streamlined and
But
simplified.
you can still vote.
It's the
But
best
unfortunately, what you've
value-added
got to
user
remember.
experience that we could provide to. Yeah, any buzzwords I missed there?
But this is how you have to vote.
While you were away, we ratified the Mark III Constitution again. You're welcome.
I mean, I have no problems with that.
The community would be really mad.
Well, we could just ratify the Mark I Constitution again.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Considering that
I don't
we
know that.
lost it several years ago, that there's no way we could do that, so it'd pretty much be anarchy. The only thing that would remain is that the mods are popularly elected because they are the same people as the ministers. And that the elections use a random number generator.
Is this a live? Is this live?
This
Is
is
it?
live.
What you... Okay, I'm not going to say anything. That's fine. I just wanted to check. That's all.
Do you guys want to go over the poll?
No. Other things.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'll leave you guys to it. You guys, you want to? I was just wondering what was going on.
Okay,
I wasn't
I'm
here.
going to do a quick skim over the results here. And have you ever run for or held an office? And 2/3 of the people who answered the poll held an office, which is pretty reasonable. I'm actually surprised it's not slightly higher, but the no could very well represent new players, and I could break that down a little more in detail later. We've only had 2 people that were here from Mark 1.
You and
I don't know who the other is.
the person.
And everyone came here from Mark 4, which is, of course, logical. But there were 19 responses that were not here from Mark 4.
Oh, so just people who just weren't
Well,
around.
I wasn't here for Mark 4, for example.
You would have been in Mark 3.
Yeah, I was Mark 3.
Was around temporarily in Mark 4 near the end. No, near the beginning.
Actually, most of these people are just brand new.
Yeah.
Now, there is one response where someone left a comment that said "Feed York," and it was one of the first comments that was left. So I'm looking through the
The wild short box appeared.
I'm looking through
Ooh,
the form
With
results,
Sean and Jonas.
and I'm seeing F small letter lowercase letter with a line that goes up, space capital Y lowercase o, and some other letters. And I've been on the internet so much that I see that and I just immediately read it as something other than Feed York. Like, well, same. Oh wait, sorry, misread that.
How you doing, Sean and Jonas? Welcome.
Hey, sorry, I forgot about this. I was watching West Wing.
He was getting his political intrigue ready.
Yeah, right?
So we were just starting to talk about the civilization poll. I can't talk today because I've had no coffee. and that will be my excuse for every mistake I make today.
It's fair.
So, the part we were just mentioning was the people who were involved in Mark IV, and there are 19 people in the poll who were not in Mark IV, of which 3 were from previous games. So, about 16 people who are brand new who responded to the poll.
Check.
Okay, most.
We've got 2 new people in the chat as well, so
Yes.
feel free to say hi to them as well.
Hello, new people. Welcome to Stress Simulator and Anger Simulator 2K19. It is fun though, but just prepared to get angry at people who are assholes.
Thanks a lot.
Mainly Uhtred. Yeah,
No,
Uhtred
not
is usually who I get mad at. Fuck.
Yeah, I'm one of them. There's a few people you might just immediately just be like, that person I want to smash in the face with a
Oh,
brick
thanks a lot.
over and over. I didn't say you, did I?
You know, I have that effect
So
on
I'm in
people.
sales, so basically my everyday. Okay.
Well, if it's your everyday, then that's your everyday. Then fair enough. Maybe would recommend seeing someone about that though. But sure.
Y'all want to
I'm-
get back to the poll, maybe?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, this majority, 78%, were not part of a convention before. And I'm going to pull that question down here and see, for those who were not part of the convention, see if there's any interesting stats on this. A lot of these are just completely new people who have not participated before. So that's kind of interesting. There's a couple people who were in previous marks who were not part of a convention, and that's also interesting. So now for the real questions, stuff that people were really asking. What type of government model? So I put 3 choices and other, and it was representative democracy, direct democracy, and monarchy. Which representative democracy was the most popular at 70%.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we expect. We are playing Democraciv.
Right. Well,
Those.
there is often a support for direct democracy, and there has been a movement for a monarchy going around. So, kind of wanted to see just how popular those ideas were.
I prefer a coup d'état. I think it's more fun.
But what is kind of a thing that's been discussed by some people is an elected monarchy, which will
Now,
go ahead.
to interrupt here, I don't quite get how an elective monarchy would work here.
You and anyone who
the
saw the
thing-
Star Wars prequels. Anyway, go on.
Because normally we have a president. Now, if we have an elected monarch, is the idea, what's the idea behind that? Do we vote on a monarch and then, do they die in game the same way a president's terms up? And then what do we do? Do we vote, or does that monarch pass it on to someone else? Type thing. That's because otherwise, if it's just saying, oh, it's a monarch, but then we always vote for a new monarch, well, that's not a monarch, is it?
Right.
That's a
President.
basically, yeah.
I would assume the former, right? I would assume some form of lineage had to be established, right? Or some inheritance,
Yeah. I mean,
some
it
kind.
would be interesting to have a model where you have a monarch, they choose their heir, and so on and so on, and the people have the ability to revolt and make and overthrow the ruler and instate their own ruler. but I don't know.
The question,
I just,
go on.
not to cut you, I don't know logistically how we make the monarchy unique enough that it's worth
Yeah,
the time and effort that it's going to require.
that's very much my worry and point of view on it. Like, it's a cool idea, but it's as you say, how do we make it its own independent thing that is worthwhile?
And
As you say, you
yeah, go ahead.
no, as I say,
Yeah.
no. Just, that was
Their concern is the powers of the monarch. How much do we give them? Because we are a community after all, and the reason Democraciv works is because you have the power spread among a lot of people in different branches. But if we have just a monarch, how powerful do we make them versus the legislature, for instance? So it's kind of difficult.
Yeah, I don't see. Our efforts would be better spent elsewhere, in my opinion. Just in terms of like just raw time and power that it would take to make something worthwhile.
Would love to hear from someone who is pro-monarchy, though. Unfortunately, we don't have anybody, but
that's because nobody actually is pro monarchy in real life.
Well, and not to knock or talk bad about like I guess the community, but like how much of is the monarchy movement just memeing and trying to have fun?
You could say that about the Beyond Earth
I'm
movement.
wondering
But
about some of the stuff that's being brought up lately. I try and give people the benefit of the doubt, but
Right. Like I'm not trying to sit here and say that like I'm sure that there are people that think the idea of a monarchy is good, but like I've not seen any type of like actual movement for it.
well,
Just like, hey, we have a monarchy party,
I'll say of the 4 people that voted monarchy on the poll, 1 is completely new, 2 are from Mark IV, and 1 is from Mark III. So these are
So then
new people coming in.
my next right, and so my next question is why. What is our threshold? And I think this is probably a you question more than anybody. But like, what's our threshold for disregarding things? Like, at what point do we say, okay, this didn't get enough support in the poll; it's not worth our time talking about?
If something is being talked about and something's being discussed in the community, and it comes up in the poll and it has very little support, we need to say this came up, this had no support.
Right, like just we could sit here and talk about every option, but then we'll be here for 2 months.
Yeah.
Like, just from a time standpoint, we need to hone in on things, and people need to accept that. I'm sure there'll be another meltdown in the community, but still.
curious, was it only 1 vote for other?
2 votes, I believe.
Yeah,
I
I've
wonder,
got 2
I
at
wonder what that is.
3.3%.
Yeah, 2 votes for other. And
Dictatorship.
yeah, one person wants a direct voting system, which is interesting. Direct voting tends to not work out. Oh, wait.
But yeah, the irony is this community demands so much in terms of referendums that we basically have a direct voting system anyway. I mean, every major like decision point eventually gets turned into a referendum, or a certain people shit themselves.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I would really like, and this is a personal idea, but I would really like to see this mark. We as like put more faith in our elected officials and let them run run the government. And I get that we need to have referendums on big things, but not everything needs to hit one.
This is a democracy, and in a democracy, you do not get people having full faith in their politicians without.
I guess.
yeah, but in a democracy, you also don't have a vote on every single little.
I guess. I'm an American, and I can count on one hand the amount of referendums I ever had to vote in. But American politics is just like like we elect our officials and then they do the governing. I know that some European countries have more in the way of referendums, but I don't. I can never recall having.
I think that's a question for the legislature, right? That's a question what kind of.
Right, that's not like analysis.
that does come to the question of how do you
Point
get
though.
people involved in this, because people don't want to just come here, be passive, when they can influence things. So that
So I was actually thinking about this, and I want to bounce this off y'all. But like, if we stagger elections, that would mean
Yes.
that there is always an election going on, and which might get draining. But it would also mean people are here participating in something, as opposed to, oh, we voted. I know I don't have to vote again for 4 weeks. Let me check out until the election time. Like,
Show you a proposal real quick because I've been working on it, and you're speaking my language right now, Sean.
if you want to PM me, I'll read it. Or put
I'll
it in public.
I'll just post it in the chat for
That
people
works.
to see.
The way you're suggesting, Sean, what we need is I mean, something I think I've been chirping on about for about a year and a half now, is we need more out of game RP stuff going on. Like, as much as the game is, the core of what we do, we're trying to win a game of Civ 5. Sorry, Civ 6 now. I was a big campaigner for Civ 6. I don't know why I said Civ 5. The facade is slipping. Dun dun dun. No. We are playing Civ 6, and that is the core. We're trying to win that game. But the thing is what drew me to Democraciv first, and why I became so distanced from it in Mark 4, was that the game took center point, and it shouldn't. What should be happening is the decisions, the interactions between government officials, legislator or executive or whoever during the week between the game sessions should be the crux of the argument. That's how there should be news reporting on what's going on. I understand that newspapers can take a little while to write or whatever, but people can be like, oh, there was a debate in the legislature and this came up and that came up, or there's live broadcasts like this, for example, so that people can be informed, they can be part of the game, and when it comes around to things like elections or referendums, depending on how many we do it, then people are like, oh, actually, no, I'm more informed. I've been part of the game, rather than just kind of, it's very easy to be part of Democracy, but just see what goes on, say, a Sunday game session. I think that's it. Whereas what should be happening is there should be such a wide game going on outside of it that game session, while it's the core, shouldn't be a major part of the game.
It's actually funny. Go ahead. Sorry, someone else.
I was just gonna ask him if he caught the last DNN.
Who, me?
article. Yeah, you.
I read most of it. It was quite long.
It's a whole 4 or 5 articles, though. That's not neither here nor there.
and I have a bonus
I think that.
with Masenko on that.
God,
Shit.
what did I do?
Here we go.
Yeah, you left out something very important from our interview.
What?
I love.
Everything got silent.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I was asking what I left out.
The whole bit about Melissa McCarthy.
Oh, that was for me. I specified that.
Wait, what?
When I'm doing my
Psychologically profiling us to
Around-
steal our identities.
Oh no, I think for me it's really important that as a reporter I present people in a certain way, and it's kind of hard right now since there's not a whole lot of politics happening and you don't have the sort of personas flying back and forth. But I'm trying to sort of, for myself, give everybody a little bit of character when I do my writing, so that some more interesting things to read, I guess. That was mostly for me. If you want, I can.
Oh no,
I can
I'm just
start.
Yeah, I'm just kind of joking about that. I was joking with the answer too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had asked
I thought it was
how I would visualize myself, how I would physically describe myself, which I thought was a weird question. So I just gave some weird answer with some random celebrities in it.
Melissa McCarthy is a great a great
Well, it was
choice.
something like I saw myself as Liv Tyler, but would be more likely Melissa McCarthy, something like that.
Almost would rather be Melissa McCarthy. She has my favorite line in a movie ever, which now we're fully off track. But if you've ever seen Spy, she tells somebody she's going to rip their dick off and stick it to their forehead to their limp dick unicorn, and it is easily my favorite line in a movie ever.
Wow.
American comedy, am I right, guys?
I know, right? It's great.
Anyway,
So,
no, go for it.
What I was going to say is kind of building on what Uhtred said. The I think the biggest thing that might help with that is if our legislature branch is split up into two houses, that means two houses have to fight to pass things as well. Kind of like Masenko's draft here. Like if it has to get support in both houses, which means it's not going to be so closed doors. Like it's not going to be. It goes to the legislative branch, and they all agree, so it gets passed. It means there has to be more open air conflict, which I think is the good type of conflict, and not the conflict like surrounding the first past the vote runoff election, where people are just being dickheads and yelling at each other.
Oh my god, that was just such a fucking nightmare.
Well, yeah, I'm not trying to fall down that hole again.
No.
If you look at the proposal, it's like you said, it's divided into two chambers, and one of them is a chamber that gets seats per province, just like the one Tiberius posted earlier.
Yeah, I really like, and I know that it's kind of mixed right now. Actually, I haven't looked recently. Shuio system, provincial system. It's actually like fairly close with. If we include the no and maybes together, it's actually ahead of yes. Yes is the predominant answer at 40%. But regardless, I think that is a system that can generate interest in the game and conflict. And I know I keep talking about conflict, but like the good type of conflict that Democraciv likes to have, which is political argument, political debate, as opposed to negativity. It would just need to be done right.
Point I wanted to raise was in section 1 3A, which is the fact that the ministers elected in a way that each province would decide. The cool idea that not all ministers are elected the same. It would be up to the people of their province to determine what kind of electoral system or method to choose them are. As long as it's democratic, you could take that to the courts and whatnot if you feel it's not, right? That would give people within the provinces something to do as well.
Well, I think even, like, I like that, and I think even expanding on the province system, kind of what Alpha's proposal talks about, with how if we set it up correctly, and I know I keep talking about multiple civs because I think it's a really unique and really cool way to do this. If we divide up into multiple civs, that allows the federal government to do things like tax or try to press service, like troops to a communal war up into the federal service, things like that, which just add to the RP. And like I know that like there's a big push in this game for RP, and it's things like that we never have to worry about as a one civilization, nation, because the federal government already has control of that. But think if we're three separate, the federal government could say, hey, like you need to give me money for this war I'm about to go fight for us. You know what I mean? Things like that, which could add another depth to what the government can do. Because I know I brought it up last time, I've always kind of felt like the legislature falls off in its ability to govern, because once it makes the baseline, the majority of laws, there's not really a lot for it to do. But I mean, yeah, there's flashpoints and stuff in the game that need legislative oversight, but I've always felt like their role tapers off as we get farther into the game, and the ministry, despite being the weaker of the branches, like Coffee said last time, takes over as the center stage because they have to win the game at that point.
Well, I was actually intending to try and fix that a little bit. Hopefully, I wanted the chancellor or president or prime minister, whatever you want to call them, to really only have authority over moving units and diplomacy with other foreign nations. And so that way you have a system which not only encourages but sort of mandates that the legislature take a position in determining what happens in the game and giving directives and giving sort of regulations as to how the chancellor is supposed to play the game. I'm still working out the wording on all this, but I really think that having a legislature involved in what the game is doing and the different decisions being made is really important, and that'll require the game to be slowed down prior to be having the game played on a sort of basis that is determined by the legislature, rather than the legislature, speeding up to pass laws like they did last time to conform to the ministry's sort of minimum requirements. I think we should try it the other way around and have the sort of legislature dictate the pace of the game based on how much it needs.
Here's one that I've always had, at least belief in and ideas of, although it never seems to get through to people. I don't think we should have that large a constitution to begin with. I think our constitution should be extremely minimal, i.e., basically allow it to just do the first election, and then let the game start. So the idea behind it, before you think I sound like a complete lunatic, is that both parties and players have to create the constitution as we go. It means that what ends up because what I've seen happen whenever a constitution is made, various people, and it's particularly 2 or 3 people per mark, not necessarily the same ones, get really involved in the constitution. But then it gets voted in, people accept it, like, yeah, this is great, blah blah blah. But then what happens is as you go on, people start picking holes in it. There's this hole, that hole, there's this hole. This, you've done this wrong, done that wrong, done this wrong. And A, it wears out the players. B, it gets people really frustrated because everyone's kind of like, oh, why didn't we see this in the first place? And it just creates kind of a negativity towards the constitution. And we always get to this point where we're kind of like, oh, what do we need to make sure we put in? What do we, and it's never ideal. So for me, the way I see it is if we have something so limited, or at least initially small, to allow people to create it as we go, as we move. And in all honesty, I feel like that's more of more simulation of a democracy overall, because if you, I'm never going to rule out, if you play it like that someone is going to create an absolutist monarchy power, made in like just somehow. But it relies on the players and the other members that are involved in the government to actually take a step back, look at the game, and see what's going on, and see if they can work out whether or not, someone is about to overthrow the whole government and change the game and stuff like that, and allow these movements, ideas, and all this kind of stuff to be happening. But allow it to grow naturally, rather than trying to force everything to happen at once and then later on have to deal with the fallout of that.
A question, well, I like that is, how much do we trust the general Democraciv player? And once again, I know that sounds awful, but my gut instinct is not let people hijack the game in any way to make it so they just can't. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, I get where you're coming from.
I know, and I know that I'm probably ultimately wrong in my lack of faith in people, but that's just my default position.
Are you familiar with how?
Go ahead.
Coffee. I was just asking Uhtred.
Yo.
With the last of Constitution, did you get Did you look over
What?
it? Did you have any sort of relationship with it?
The fourth one, for Mark 4. Misenko, if you're trying to talk, you're really like not projecting.
Sorry about that. My mic doesn't pick up very well.
That's fine.
Yeah, I was asking if you were familiar with the Mark IV one at all. Like,
Well, I tried to get involved, but as per usual, it got to the point where, and I think this is my massive problem with it, and I don't know about anybody else, but it got to the point where, people just, what do you call it? Overtook it. They got their various ideas, and I just felt that it was going too deep, and plus there was other people about that were doing my head in, so I kind of just gave up and stopped.
Yeah.
did you think that the last constitution wasn't minimalist enough?
Yeah, I very much feel that way.
What I'm kind of gathering here is that you want the absolute bare bones.
I basically only want a constitution that says this is how we run the first vote.
Okay, now that makes sense.
That's it. That's all I want, basically.
Well, one area that I ran into some conflict during the Mark IV convention was that I like to have a constitution that prepares for things in advance, and people kept talking about the safeguards and hand-holding that shouldn't be in the Constitution. So that was a big area of conflict between my philosophy and what the rest of the people wanted, was that they did not want a constitution that would protect the game from disaster. And in a sense, I know they're right about some of it, and I did kind of go overboard, perhaps. But it starts to make me wonder, what's the purpose of the Constitution in the first place? It doesn't necessarily serve as a supreme law exclusively, when what it really is saying this is what the government can't do, or this is what the government has to do. It's more of a manual for running the government in a proper way, so that it's not just running amok. It's a self-imposed limitation on government. So, in a sense, small constitution, we are trying to remove limitations on government.
Definitely. Um, to have a repeat of Mark III's constitution. I also personally think that the constitution that we had in Mark IV was just a little too minimalist. Personal opinion, I felt like there just wasn't. It just felt very.
I think the major problem I have with having a dense constitution is new players. Like we have decided, especially with Mark V, we've decided to go with Civ 6. Already, I can see. Pardon me. Oh God. Sorry, I'm not very well. Already by my poll, new players are overwhelmingly the ones who support the idea of playing Civ 6 and who are new. So that is our big step going forward. Is we're playing the more popular game. There is a real chance that we can attract even more players to the game over the next few weeks as we go towards, drafting a constitution and creating a final, version and doing our first elections, which is where people want to get involved. But the problem is, if you create a constitution that is dense, that only the very savvy constitution understanders and writers, no offense, such as yourself, Masenko, such as yourself, Espresso, you guys who are very much always at the front of it, making the decisions and being there and being involved in it, it's going to put people off, and it's put me off before. No, I stuck around because I know that it can be okay, but yeah, it's I don't know. I think that a dense and overbearing constitution is bad for democracy in general, and I don't think we've done
I
it.
th- I think I think we're all kind of in agreement with that, though,
Yeah,
right?
but
Like
I'm
we
going
Yeah.
to say that I don't think we've done one that is uh, allows the players to have that much fun. I think they've all been way too much, and in all honesty, quite shit.
Every single one of them has
Uh,
been released unfinished. Usually because the conventions tend to have problems. The Mark II convention was a different case, though.
yeah, they've had the flaws, but I think that at least Mark II and Mark IV's constitution, or at least the marks themselves, were quite good.
Well, the big problem with Mark II is that two of us got sick during the convention, and it just happened to be when the Constitution was released and ratified. We weren't there.
But what I'm trying to say is, even with the flaws, even if they are unfinished, they still provided a good basis, and people still had fun.
Yeah.
Um,
A perfect Constitution is not
New
going to be fun.
players.
I will say that.
I think you do raise good points. I just you know people here now. And I don't think a constitution alone people's interest. Um, there are merits to having a very clear, legible constitution, but
Yeah.
My concern with a constitution like that's super minimalist is that we do have people in the game that will pick at any hole and try to abuse it. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Like, don't think that's me coming off as saying like, oh, that's something that shouldn't happen in Democraciv. It's the game. You know what I mean? Ultimately, the game is to resist those type of people and win the game. We just have to be cognizant of that there are people that will.
Sean Box, the conspiracy theorist.
Well,
I mean, I'll do it.
he's
What
not
do you think the
wrong.
SCP is? Like, I'm going to come out and say it. Possibly, this role play as the SCP could include stuff like that. We're communists, but that's neither here nor there.
We overthrow the government and establish our own powers.
Yeah, basically.
Let's do it.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just saying, like, that is something we need to be aware.
No, you put the idea in my head now, and I will not be happy until we've done it.
Okay, then.
Sean's just like shit.
I'm never gonna hear this.
Convention is already planning the downfall of Mark V, so you saw it here live on the.
Yeah, right.
So hashtag end the Mark V.
Can we just skip straight to 6? Just accept 5 as a wash. This will be Mark.
Yeah. Hashtag end the Mark V movement.
Yeah, so we should actually declare the next Mark Mark 7 and not tell people what happened to Marks 5 and 6.
Yeah, just
So
skip
shall
them.
we start the vote for the next Civ game we're going to play?
Right. So the next thing I'm going to do is have a vote for which version of Civ we're going to play in Mark 7.
Oh my god, you understand how much people would shit themselves? It would be brutal. People would die. But anyway,
Yes. So, short minimalist constitution is the most popular choice in the poll, but maybe is close. So, only 20%, so only 12 people said they do not want a short constitution. So it's pretty clear that everyone is in favor of the short constitution except for a small minority. And this is only 60 people, which is about half of the voter turnout. But based on all the conversations I'm seeing, this is kind of the theme. People like having a minimal constitution, and the Mark IV constitution is pretty well received with almost 2/3 approval in the poll.
Definitely.
So, we've already decided that we're going to be using the Mark IV Constitution as a template for how this Constitution is going to look. So now we also know we want to keep it short. Alright. So the next two questions on here were the citizenship and the roleplay question. So the citizenship is 40% in favor, 33% possibly, 26 say no. So that means about that a majority are open to the idea at the least. But it didn't. I'm not yet specific on how that should play out, but like I didn't ask what kind of citizenship system. I just asked, is this something we need to look into? And I would say this is something that's very popular right now. There's a lot of ideas about a provincial system rather than just the citizenship. But I would say we probably are looking at doing this. This is enough people want it in some form. We cannot repeat the way it was done in Mark III.
Can I be controversial?
Sure.
I don't really see the problem with the Mark III version. I thought the Mark III version worked fairly well. I think the problem with the Mark III version was that people got that it kind of the system was fine. I think that it was ran poorly initially. People didn't realize how to use it, and the people in charge, whenever people were like whoever was in charge at what times, weren't maybe acting on it quick enough. Is that the right way to say it? I'm not quite sure, but I think it was good.
It was flawed in that it took a lot of time investment to manage it, and we put it all on one person to do that, to do all the work with that.
Okay.
Not naming any names here.
I know it was Masenko, but that's what I'm saying. Like, the fact that was how it was done, i.e., all
I will say,
piled on one person.
managing all of that as one person is pretty remarkable. So I was impressed by that.
Look, the citizenship system itself wasn't crazy. Most of the reason that I left in Mark III, and most of the reason I got overwhelmed doing citizenship, in addition to like three other things, in addition to three other kinds of systems, and keeping track of all the legislative stuff and keeping track of all the court stuff, and like, you know, Mark III was cumbersome, you know.
Yeah.
But I think that if citizenship were like the only complicated thing other than maybe elections that required a little bit of manpower every so often, I don't see how that produced in a similar fashion. Personally, I understand the reluctance, of course, but like from my own perspective, it wasn't too hard. It really wasn't.
I think the biggest issue that we ran into in the end was the lack of people being involved. Like, we ran out of people to even serve in the legislature, let alone go to new cities and various things like that. Now, I think citizenship is great because what you can do with it is you can create this, you can create this sense of like, RP level, and it depends on how much the citizens want to get involved in stuff. But there's a lot there that could work. But as I say, I think we mishandled it, i.e. giving it all to one person to do. Which is never fun for said person, Masenko.
Hi.
But that's not fair on doing it like that. And I think there was people who were just opposed to it in general. But when it first came out, I think it had a really good impact. Like it made moving cities and governorships really fun. The way that like you had the DSP and DVP strongholds in various cities kind of reflects in real life, where various places would vote a various party and stuff like that. And
Don't mean to interrupt you, but
the
I
great
need to
thing with
step
that,
out for just a second, so you can go ahead and keep talking. I'm just gonna be away for like 1 minute.
that's but that meant that, say it was a DVB president, they might have to deal with two DSP governors who might not want to do exactly the same as what they're trying to do, but they have the power in the city. So the president might want to do, okay, guys, I'm want to build up to go like with think I want to build up an army, whereas or I want to make sure that we're focusing on construction. Perhaps let's send internal trade routes or this and that, whatever. Whereas the other party or other parties could be actually no, I want to build these type of improvements, or I want to build military forces, or I want to focus on science, and it kind of it leads to these situations where party politics becomes important, which then becomes more relevant outside of the game. And this is what I think Democraciv really needs to concentrate on this mark, is creating a real sense that the game outside is more important than the core-based game and what we do during the stream. I feel like I keep chirping on about that, but that is generally what I think is like really, really, really important to keep players interested, to allow for it to grow, and to have a really, really good time.
I actually brought that up last time. Like, I think that we have hit a point in maybe not all of Democraciv, but in Democraciv where we need to, like, how many people actually watch the streams? Like, I think we were kind of talking about this, but like, I don't. I keep abreast of them with the post-stream synopsises, but I don't watch them because they're boring.
Yeah.
And so something to keep people out of, like, interested, like you said, outside of the streams is what we need. Sorry. I kind of lost my train of thought there because I'm doing something else.
Well,
Right.
this does tie into the next question about should we focus on optimal play or political role play, of which 63% were all in favor of role play. So it's really 2-1 on that, whether we should try and go for a balance or role play, but only 3 people wanted us to focus on the Civ game so far as our play focus. So I think that is something that was really lacking, is that we might have focused too much on civilization and less on the Democra part in that.
Now, I think, sorry I keep chatting a lot, but I think that may have something to do with the fact that we were playing Civ 5. And we've played Civ 5 a lot. There's a lot of people in here who can play Civ 5 very well. And you were just playing the base Civ 5 as well, which basically means that you kind of know which way people are going to build.
Right.
And there's not really too much difference in that. Whereas with Civ 6, because it's not as well known, and it might even get to the point with what's it called? Is it Gathering Storm?
Yeah, and that's going to be, because it's probably going to coincide with when we finish all of this. Would be just in time for Gathering Storm. If we use that, nobody's going to know the mechanics well enough to game the system.
Yes, exactly. Which is going to be good. Like, I think that's a really good way to do it.
Agree.
Yeah.
Because people will be more focused on how do we play this as a party, and how do I follow my party's ideas, rather
There's
than
2 things in Civ 6 that I really want to see how they play out. Is how we've got the district and the civic system. Is I would like to see political campaigns focused on civics. Like, we'll have some movement that is really pro military tradition, and really campaign for that. And that's what I want to see come out of Civ 6. and I want to see people to having loyalty to their districts.
Yeah, and I also I keep harping on this point, but I think one of the reasons that we have such an issue with role play and all that kind of stuff is because the game just goes too fast.
Yeah.
The executives play a bunch of turns all at once, and it's not communicated very effectively because there's a lot to communicate and nobody really wants to do it. And then we get to a point where, like, if we could just slow down the game a little bit,
Yeah.
you know, I want to slow it down way down, but if we could at least slow it down just a little bit, you'll get a situation where we can break down what actually happens in the game a little bit more, and you can get that kind of role play where you have certain parties who, for example, like pro agriculture versus pro industrialist parties, right? You can have that kind of cool interactions within the game that you don't have usually.
So one of the best roleplay / game mechanics that I think was ever voted through was the WPA. Now, I didn't agree with it. I thought it was detrimental to the actual playing of the civilization, but
I completely agree.
It was very much roleplay. It was the Green Party literally being, by the way, we don't want you to cut down trees. We're going to focus on the legislative in the first election, get enough people into it, get people on our side, do a bit of political maneuvering. Bam, we've got it in. You legally can't cut down trees. And, you know, it was like, oh my God, this is really irritating. But then when I was playing it, then the more and more I'd look back at it, I'm like, actually, that was it. Yeah, it was irritating. You can't really deny that. But it works so well as an example of how roleplay and government outside of the game works for the actual civilization game.
And it brought people to have sort of, I mean, for what it was, people had sort of a healthy debate and discussion about it, right? Like there was a political counter argument to it that wasn't simply that it wasn't optimal, but you had people going, fuck the trees, right? Like, you know? Anyway.
Yeah, there was plenty of
You bring
stuff
up a good point.
that you know was really good, but unfortunately didn't quite work overall, or at least wasn't continued.
And I think if the legislature is making more in-game decisions like that, I think you'll see more bills like that. You see certain people wanting to place limitations on how they want the executive to execute the game.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, so finishing up with the poll, there were 15 comments, of which some were kind of silly, but there's some support for an elected monarchy to serve as president and win. Did we skip over some of the government model stuff? I think we did.
You skipped over what type of legislature and what type of executive branch.
Yeah, kind of some big ones. Two house is really popular. I just don't see how feasible it is.
So I have my idea for two houses. It needs a lot of work. It was an idea I came up with.
I mean, we already have a big glass house. Do we need any more?
Yeah, so I had obviously my brainwave, brain fart. I don't quite know. Still up for debate. But the idea was, I was trying to model my idea on the House of Parliament in the UK, where you have a House of Commons, which is elected by the people, and a House of Lords, who are appointed. The House of Lords, you have Tory, Labour, Liberal peers, i.e., they generally are appointed there by the government or by the party to kind of help vote in their interest. Now, the way I was seeing it was that was perhaps how we could split the executive and the legislature. The idea being that you have a executive that is selected by the legislative, i.e., they're voted in, but the legislative is voted in by everyone. So, you know, it allows the legislative to kind of do their own little thing and be semi-independent and be more representative of the people. So, creating more representative democracy. And then allowing at the same time as that, you have the executive that gets voted in, and they can be part of the exec. Now, the way I was trying to make it was you can have more people in that second house than you do, than you need for executive positions. So, like ministries and things like that, you can have more people in that house. If you're passing like a various, like, depending on the bills or a law, it has to go through both houses. But those people in the upper house can actually be voted out by the legislative.
So I just want to throw this out there because while he was talking, I kind of thought of it, and it would probably need a lot of tweaking. But just roughly, what if we made a system where one house was voted in by the people, and the other house was appointed by parties, and every party got at least one seat? And I know that we probably don't want to do that because that gives voice to too many people or parties to meet a certain threshold. Let's say that. So you can't just make a party and get a seat. But that would give small parties representation in the government. It would still allow people to be voted, but it would also mean that everybody had a seat at the table.
So if we have a dozen parties, we're guaranteed 12.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. We would need to come up with a system to differentiate between like an actual good party, a meaningful party, or and parties that people just create to get a seat at the table. Does that make sense?
Like, gonna sound like Mark III's constitution.
I get that.
Really,
we don't want to go
that political parties were even part of the Constitution in there.
Well, I'm just trying to think of a system where we don't have to worry about, like, I don't know. Just forget it. I'm kind of just.
What do you guys think of the proposal that I have? And to everyone.
Okay.
Get it?
Well, it seems like it's actually just moving the ministry out of the executive branch into a legislative branch, and then having a figurehead acting as executive. It's not all that different. It's just relocating the ministry.
Also turning it into a legislature. The ministry wouldn't be playing the game anymore. You're just sort of, but the way the ministry's set up is it's more federal, right? It's like a deal. Just called it the ministry because I know people like that term. Those are just placeholder names. They don't function at like the ministry. They just function like a legislature.
I say because for a ministry, where it's +2 for each additional province, after 2 provinces, it's going to become too big of a mess to actually work.
Oh, well, I haven't quite defined provinces yet, and I think that provinces can be like any size. You could have one province the entire game, right? If you add a new city, they can say, all right, that's a new province. Or they can say that's part of the original province. If you have 5 cities, they can say 3 of them are in one province.
The system I proposed.
Yeah, I was inspired by that, as well as various other kinds of systems. A lot of this is sort of a conglomerate of a bunch of different ideas that I thought would work. Thing that seemed tight and neat.
You seem tight and neat. Sorry, that was too tempting.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
One difference in how you're calculating representation and my was that mine is population based completely, not so much based on each province. So a large province will have, we'll just use the term province, I use the term state. A large province would have more representation, whereas here you get 2. So a small province and a large province would be equal. Now, the U.S. does kind of have that issue with the Senate, where Idaho has as much Senate representation as Texas,
Yes.
which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think so too. That for the sake of numbers and trying to cut down on who. I mean, we could add. I could add something that essentially allows the legislature to tweak those numbers like we have had in the previous constitutions. I still think personally, this is a good sort of little easy. It's simple. Um, rural legislature, intuitive, integrates the provinces in a nice way that isn't too crazy. Wanted to see your guys' thoughts on it, and I'm going to keep writing.
So I'm thinking about what happens if a province has 5 citizens and how many of them would actually be active. Would we get into a situation where you only have one person in a province that would want to be participating, but now we've got 2 ministers?
Keep in mind that specify that the elected ministers have to be from the province. That the voters choose them.
Right. So, like, your houses or your legislative branches, I can't talk today, would be more of a traditional. It has to come from the provinces, but any of your executives could come from anywhere.
That's essentially the reason I left that there, so that you didn't have a situation where the citizens all are like, oh, we live here, but none of them actually want to be an
The
executive.
system here is basically 2 redundant houses looking like it. They have the same powers, essentially. It's just that anything they do has to be bounced to the other house. So the thing I'm wondering is, why is it necessary to split the house in this case when apparently they are doing the same job? It's just more of a review system.
I reckon the way to split.
The reasoning.
This is what
I have a rationale.
Go on.
The reason for I think a bicameral legislature is worth it is I noticed there were a lot of people who took issue with how the executive veto was working. I can hear myself echoing right now. So it's a little distracting. But yeah, so the reason I think in a sense was used was never very satisfying for a lot of people. And I think a bicameral legislature puts a check on legislation just naturally in a way that is a little more organic and a little less infuriating. You know, so that's one of the reasons I wanted a bicameral legislature. But I also think that having sort of with different types of representation, some adds additional sort of checks and balances. Legislation, but on political power. A few times as a concern. That's sort of the reason I did it. I don't know if you have a counterpoint to that or whether.
Yeah, you're just wrong.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Good discussion.
You know what? I'll just scrap it.
Yeah, just restart from. Yeah, I figured it.
I have to sniffle.
Does anybody have anything to
No,
respond to
no,
that?
no. I think we always do that at these meetings. Don't take it personally. It's like we all just forget that we're having a conversation. No, I don't have anything.
Masenko, you're wrong. You're old. Leave No.
So
We should include in the Constitution if you play in more than 2 games, you just can't play.
Yeah.
A geriatric law.
trying to get
You
rid of
officially
me now?
die.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, I've got one. I think we should put it in that if you are in government, then if over 50 years in game pass, then you die, and
Oh, wow.
you have to then give up your seat, and your seat has to be elected again.
Wow.
That'll
Oh,
be really
geez.
fun at the
Okay.
beginning of the game.
As I say, don't question the fact that the first part of the game means that everyone's dying like straight away. If you don't, it's better for everybody.
Just accept that it's happening.
Yes.
Anyway, did we want to get back to the poll?
Well, I think we've covered pretty much all the topics on it. So, again, just a quick skim over it. We know, as far as the demographic stuff goes, we know that most of the people have held office. We've got a lot of newcomers, and a lot of people who've never been part of a convention before were involved. We know that... Oh, I guess there is some stuff I missed here with the executive. A question that I worded very badly was about whether we should have a ministry that's popularly elected or a ministry elected by a select body. And then there's a president and there's direct voting. Some people who picked president actually specified they wanted a monarch instead.
Memes. I would disregard it.
The ministry popularly elected is the most popular choice, and I wonder if the people got confused by the second ministry option, which is the idea that the ministry would be appointed by legislature or some other group, so it wouldn't be directly voted on. The majority, not really a real majority, but the most people wanted the ministry that's popularly elected. Most people want a ministry of some kind. So, thoughts in the room on ministry versus presidency?
I like the presidency. I think that it once again it creates more national drama. Since only one person can win it, it means that parties have to coalesce behind needing multiple party support for one person. We'd have to do like a runoff election or something, along those lines. But I think that would be the most interesting way to do it. But,
I also think that the issues with the ministry solved by having a president. Personally,
I know there was a lot of
these issues of sort of transparency
that I had during the first session, the first ministry in Mark IV, would not have happened in a presidential situation, and a lot of the lawsuits wouldn't have happened. Other lawsuits could have happened, but it's easier to just sue the president.
Yeah. And I think that echo is killing me. I think having a president will have a sort of onus placed on them to be sort of a leader and to be more transparent to the public, because there's sort of a single person and really isn't other ministers. It's and to the legislature. So I think it'll help with the whole transparency issue and sort of following along with what's happening in the game issue a little bit better. Also, like the idea of the executive being a leader, because I don't think that's part of being a minister. I don't think the ministers really feel the need to be leaders. They just kind of do their thing. It feels very exclusive.
Yeah.
Right. Like, the ministry just gets away with doing whatever it wants, essentially.
Exactly.
So what I'm kind of seeing from all the discussion, looking at the poll, although ministry seemed to be more popular in the poll, I'm kind of thinking the idea of we have a presidency and two legislative houses. We could try that two houses that are matched a little differently idea that Masenko had. I'm still not quite sure. I do kind of like that it's sort of a check system.
Can I butt in for 1 second?
No.
Sure.
So I think that one thing that would definitely be useful, I apologize for the background noise, would be a cabinet of advisors.
Well, definitely. If we do a presidency model, then we need to have a structure for a cabinet with the potential for changing that cabinet.
Right, but that would add like excitement to streams with people talking instead of just someone playing a game
Which
of Civ.
is what we
You
had
mean
in Mark
almost like
3.
Mark III.
Right. So
I think
we definitely
cabinet. If we do anything with that, though, that needs to be legislatively handled. It absolutely should not be in the Constitution.
Well, the ability to create
That
the
makes it too
cabinet
rigid.
should be constitutional, but the contents of the
Right.
cabinet should
Agreed.
not.
Agreed.
Right, exactly. Maybe they'll create a presidential cabinet, but then, like you said, what goes into that should not be.
right.
I was also thinking, I mean, we've had this before, but having a vice president or vice chancellor who would serve as the head of government. You'd have the president serving as the head of state and the vice president serving as the head of government who would preside over the legislature and maybe break ties. They could serve as like kind of the speaker.
What if that was like a prime minister elected out of the legislative branch?
I
Or do you
think
think
I
it
think
would
that
need-
would be cool. They're that was one of the two that
We
would
could
be
put-
either. I thought it,
We might be getting too into the muck here, but you could put the prime minister and the president in the stream, and they would be making those type of decisions together. Like they would be playing the game together. If
Yeah.
that makes
I was thinking of already. I don't really know how it would play out or whether there are sort of alternatives, the
I
possible
am looking
options,
at
but
this thing Jonas has posted.
yeah.
And so, in his model, there's Bureau of Investigations is kind of interesting change, but so there's a president and a prime minister, but it shows here that president is a ceremonial role.
What's the point then? And I get that, like in an actual government, it matters, but this is
It
Democraciv.
almost
We don't actually have to.
feels like there's an effort here to diminish the executive branch and put as much into the legislative branch as possible between several of these proposals.
There's a
That is something that
There's
was
a-
lacking in Mark IV. Is there were no checks and balances between the branches.
I'm personally, and I know everybody kind of has their opinions, but I personally in favor is focusing the role of the president, but not diminishing it. Allow him to have kind of free reign over what's done in stream and in game. But like somebody said, take all the other decisions out of his hands. You know, like let the ministry make decisions. And sorry,
Mind if I jump in real quick?
go ahead.
The way I was thinking, the reason I modeled this the way I did it, was in-game things that do require sort of to make the sort of on-the-spot decisions, specifically unit movement, stuff like diplomacy, trade deals that come on screen that you can't close out of. um, could have those powers allocated to them. There are a finite number of powers and decisions that are made in the game, unlike real life. So it's okay to enumerate a couple of them, and the rest would go to the legislature. But also, there would be sort of a necessary and proper clause for the president. So if the legislature orders directives as to what the president has to do with regard to a trade route, for instance, but there's some sort of complication with it, or it was too vague and the president doesn't really know how to do it, then the president has sort of a necessary and proper clause to do everything necessary and proper to execute what the legislature's desires were. And then you could determine whether or not it was really necessary or proper through the courts and stuff. I think that would be a really interesting and dynamic relationship that doesn't really.
So I like that. My biggest concern is always though is people are very litigious, however you pronounce that word, within Democraciv, to the point where I think it would be detrimental. Allow them a lot of agency with, not allow them because that sounds awful, but does that make sense? Like we want to allow the courts to function, but not have them be to the point where they slow the game down an unreasonable amount.
Right.
Because people sue for everything in Democraciv.
Yeah, I see your point. I just way to be careful about it, and I think that having a legislature with most of the power will diminish any will make sure that the tension that was there before between the legislature and the ministry is a little bit more diminished, but I do see your point, and I'm kind of mull it over.
If we were going to do that, we would need to come up with a system where court cases were more expedient. It couldn't be a 3-day process to get through it,
A lot of that is the court makes the work for itself, really. It's kind of been tradition. The court didn't have a lot to do in the beginning, so they made themselves have stuff to do. Court process could potentially be faster, but...
Right. No, I get that. Go ahead.
It's up to the courts, really, figuring out how to do it faster.
But theoretically, if we were going to go a route where, essentially we allowed people to, and I know that they can challenge the government kind of at whim anyway, but if we allow them to do that, they could theoretically hold the game up for an undetermined number of terms.
I'm just saying that there wouldn't be a clause that says you can sue the president if you don't feel it's necessary and proper.
Right.
It would just say that the president has the ability to do what's necessary and proper.
Right.
So, taken from the discussion we've had, I think we can actually get an early outline of an early version of a constitution using a president, 2 houses, and does everyone think that the 5 Supreme Court justices worked as it was? Because that seems to be what we've had since 2002, and do we think that...
Why don't we go the American route? And I know I don't like to use them as the opportunity, but anyway, allow a Supreme Court will be established with a Chief Justice and allow them to set up. We could even say a minimum of 3. So if we need to expand the courts, we can. But we don't have 5 justices when there's 10 active people.
Right. And that's a good point. I'm always for scaling systems.
Not a minimum of 1.
Well, with something like the Supreme Court, I don't think 1.
More people.
I was half kidding.
Half.
Just
If
half.
we had agreed, you would have went with it.
I was half kidding.
If we would have
Yes,
agreed,
there
you
will
would
be
have
a
went with it.
minimum of 0 justices and a maximum of 1.
Sounds good to me.
And that death mechanic people had where you roll a random number to see if you die every turn, we'll apply that to justices and not to anyone else.
Oh, hold on. I don't think that's crazy. That would mean I'm serious. Bear with me here. We could set up a system where justice. Never mind. That's just gonna get too complicated. It's a black hole. But you could theoretically eliminate the need for justices to campaign because they can die, which would. You get what I'm saying? It's just a black hole of nothing. I'm gonna stop talking.
I'd say we should pull. Vic, we haven't really delved into the judicial stuff on the
That
polls
was
yet.
kind of intentional. I wanted to focus on this other area. But I'm thinking we need to get a constitution that we can show people for the next meeting, which I'm hoping Thursday or Friday. Does that maybe Saturday? No, it's not Saturday. Do you think people
Friday works okay with
Friday?
me.
Because Friday would probably be the best. Let me see.
I'm good with whatever, guys. Honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably going to hold it a little later. So let's. I usually hold these 10 o'clock Pacific. Might move that to noon to try to, 2 hours down. Try and make it easier on some people in the East Coast, at least. But I want to start having these twice a week so we can get this done. I want to have a, at least an outline constitution that's got something in it. And what I'm going to write is going to be president, 2 houses, and a court with a minimum of 3, with the details left out. And then we can look at how that is and start hammering that out into an actual constitution.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying this is what it's going to be. I'm not going to say, well, we have to use a president now. But I want a constitution draft that we can present and start actually writing this week.
I think we need to also get ahead of what is going to come as soon as you release that, and then we call it the official draft. I would get ahead of it as much as you can and just be like, hey, this is happening.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to power grab.
Right.
Because
well, I've explained before that we're not even calling it a draft until we feel that it's kind of done. I kind of look at this from a development perspective that it's really still in a prototype phase. It's still in alpha. And we're not ready to start saying this is feature complete or this is what it's going to be. It's still experimental right now.
I would say that again. I would just say it again whenever you today, and then whenever you put the draft out, because I can think of one person, 2 people off the top of my head that will probably collectively shit themselves.
I will put it in bold print all throughout the document.
I would watermark it. To be honest, I'm not even being dramatic. I would watermark that shit and say this is a draft. But you're in charge. That's just my take.
Yeah. Okay, Retro is wanting to know what's already been gone over. Mostly, we've gone over the poll in some detail. So we've kind of tried to determine what the community wants, and we know that there's a lot of people want a minimalist constitution, so we're going to aim for that. There's a lot of interest in a citizenship system, and a lot of interest in a 2-house system. So those are kind of the big points. Reason I'm kind of wanting to focus everything is, for one thing, it's been almost 2 hours, and the other thing is I want to talk about the Civ vote that's coming up. Now, I know there was a lot of drama with my use of a single choice voting, which resulted in FPTP, and then the runoff method that ended up springing up out of it. I don't want to repeat that, so what I would like to do
Tournament.
is I know how I would like to do the Civ vote, which is I was looking through my archives. Apparently, the same way we did Civ 2's vote, Mark 2's vote. However,
Mark 3, Mark
Uh,
3, Mark 3, Mark 3.
there's a lot of people asking to do the bracket system again, where we have a contest basically um, over several weeks in which each Civ goes head to head to decide who wins.
Maybe we should do a sort of referendum to determine which one we do.
No.
I know that's like arduous, but
Absolutely not.
I'm
And
really
I know that
not
there is a
looking forward
lot.
to doing that.
Yeah. Too many referendums, it just bogs down the system. I know that there's not a lot of support for stuff like that, but like people need to understand that like we elected Coffee to do this. He needs to have the ability to make decisions.
Well, like I said,
Espresso, what did you think of the Mark III tournament?
honestly, it kind of I was focusing on other things at the time, and I believe Dive was doing all of that. So thought it was kind of
Anybody else here who was around
I
for
I
wasn't-
that?
loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it was a really, really good system.
It's about the time you kind of joined, right?
Yeah, but I thought it was a really, really good way of doing it.
I personally liked it a lot too, but I don't want to.
well. My concern is people would be off put by it or frustrated by it. If there's a lot of popular support for it, though, then it's not a bad thing.
What if we did a tournament where to get on the list you have to get certain number of signatures? We could make it arbitrary, 5 signatures, 6 signatures, but that means there has to be at least be support for the civilization to even make it onto the list. That way we're not bogged down with 100 civs to do, but we're also not.
It's like 37.
How many
38.
civs are in the game?
Yeah, 38. So that would be 18 separate votes, then 9 separate votes, and then somebody would get a bye, and then you would get, or 2 people would get a bye, or 1
Well,
person.
actually, what we do is we put them on the ballot in pairs. And so you
Right.
could actually do the entire roster of civs in one go and then eliminate half of them in the first vote and then in the second. If we want to do it quickly,
Yeah,
we can do it that
can
way.
work.
Where,
It can work quickly.
yeah,
Yeah, I didn't even
That's how we
think
did
of that. Yeah, that was really dumb of me. I didn't even think of that. Not even gonna lie.
And I think that's a really good way to do it, and I think it will
Yep.
allow us to
and
move
it
on
lets me do a
quite
first
fast.
past the poll vote without people trying to kill me.
Oh, you don't know. You might get.
No, you'll get killed because you didn't ask people how they want to do this. But I just don't
Right,
care.
I'm not asking you people how to do this. I'm not talking to anyone. I'm just going to do it. No input from anyone whatsoever.
That sounds like it.
Should each party put forth its own civ candidate? What I really think is parties should be campaigning for their candidates. They should be pushing for their preference. That's, instead of just saying, well, the party gets this, the party should be trying to persuade people to give it to them. Instead of just, a lot of these ideas seem to be about, well, the party gets this because they're a party. Well, no, the party gets this because they persuaded people to give it to them. That's part of it being a democracy.
I think my other concern is legitimizing parties this early. I mean, I know I have a party, but we don't want a lot of party right now.
Yeah, but I don't want to be a party pooper.
Oh, get out. Get out. Just leave now.
Looking, there's about I think about 45 civs if you include all the DLC. Six.
I counted 30 something
Or at least 45
when
leaders.
I did the.
So keep in mind that some civs have 2 leaders.
That would be why the numbers are different.
Not
So, do we think the bracket system?
Yes.
Seems to be a lot of support for that. I've had some private messages asking me to do that. I haven't had private messages for the other way, so
it's up to you. If there's anybody here who would be opposed to a bracket system, please speak your mind.
I prefer parentheses personally.
Fuck off. Get out.
I was
prefer
thinking.
present records.
I was personally thinking that we kill somebody from the community and then we can divine what civ we play from their intros.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's
That works? That's,
Can
okay.
I nominate some people?
Sure. Anybody you
I'm trying to remember. Am I still fighting with Dometer?
No, he doesn't play in the game anymore. He just goes on Reddit.
Yeah, I never keep track of it anymore. We had a nice chat yesterday, so apparently we're
That's
not
cute.
fighting.
That's really cute.
I'm glad you guys are no longer fighting.
Yeah,
I don't like it when mommy and daddy fight.
Kinky.
I just
funny thing
realized there's DLC announced for Civ 6 Gathering
Yes.
Storm, right?
Wait,
Are we going to be using
Um,
that? Or we?
I think it just depends on how far we get,
Right, I
really.
think by the time we get a Constitution draft ready to go, we do the proofreading, and then we put it up to referendum, and we get the first government set up. And the time it takes to do that should put us exactly at the time Gathering Storm is released. So,
Okay. So, but
so it's very likely we're going to be playing with Gathering Storm.
alrighty. Another 50
Even
bucks.
if we don't get there, I think we should still play with it.
So,
I mean, it'll make the game better.
yeah, it'll
Yeah, I
certainly
think-
make it more interesting. There is going to be the matter that it will be brand new, like to the day, at that point, and so a
No.
majority of people are not going to have it. So we might want to revisit the dedicated streamer idea.
Mm-hmm.
Should just be a dedicated streamer regardless. And with the executive as sort of a backup.
Yeah.
At least the other way around, right? You have the executive as the primary streamer with a backup streamer that's just some guy that or some team.
Yeah, just someone who we know has access to the game and to a good computer and streaming capabilities. Just so that we know that the stream's not going to mess up. Because that is...
Alright.
You know, we've had that happen before.
It won't be so much of an issue if we only play a few turns at a time, y'all.
So Retro is kind of pointing out that it's going to be
Okay.
2 weeks to do the vote in the first government, so we've got this week and the next to do the convention. I'm still thinking we could get something to work out of this. I'm not saying we're going to kick the game off to the day. I'm saying that you give us 4 weeks to go over this constitution, and then I think that should give us time to put it together and proofread it, so we can start the election right away. I don't think we can get all this done and get people in office in that short amount of time, but it's
Mhm.
possible. I've really kind of assumed this is going to be a 4-weekish convention, but like the previous conventions took a lot longer. But by doing everything in a kind of a procedural way this time, it's probably going to go a lot faster. And yes, to Sun Tzu Warrior, we are putting out a. It's more of a working copy. It's going to have some stuff in it that will be picked apart during the convention, and everyone's welcome to join in on that to help pick it apart or to make comments on it elsewhere. But that'll be officially unveiled on Friday, but might be sharing it earlier. So I think we've got this meeting wrapped up, or is there anything else we need to be covering?
No, I think
Okay,
so.
kind of our review here. We're going to have a working copy of the Constitution. For a placeholder, I'm going to start with a president, 2 houses, and a court system. Very bare bones because it's mostly just to give us something to write on. Um,
And a provincial system. Don't forget that.
There's debate as to whether to put the provincial system in the Constitution or not. That was something that came up in Mark 4. Do we think we should have the provincial system in the Constitution?
Yeah,
Well,
I don't know.
if one of the houses are going to be
Right.
related to that, then yes. But if not, then no.
Okay, I will brainstorm on how to write that over the next 2 days and see how to work that in.
Otherwise, I think that's.
Alright, I could not hear you, Sean.
Hello,
I
can
can
you hear
hear
me?
you now.
Yeah, there you are.
Okay, so what I was gonna say is, I think that provinces shouldn't be in the provinces need to be easily sheddable, but not easily destroyed by a party who doesn't like them in the government. So if it doesn't work and it's dragging the game down, or we're too far under in terms of player base, we need to be able to shed the provinces. But we can't have them be functioning sort of and working, but like there's a sect of people that doesn't like them that can come into the government and remove them.
Right. That is something, I keep pitching my model where the ability to annex or dissolve a province is based on the citizens. They have to vote it in a referendum. They can't be taken over by another state. You can't just have someone's.
And I copied
Yeah, so
that.
you can't have that happen. The only way to have that happen is to flood the city with new residents, have them post the referendum, and it still is a process that takes at least 2 elections to finalize.
Well, without going too much down the rabbit hole, provinces is probably my favorite thing to talk about. But if we do that, I think the other big concern we have to realize is we can't allow, or we have to restrict in some capacity the movement of citizens, because it would be super easy for me to move in my party to another and take control uh, of the government to vote in annexation if I wanted to. I'm sure there would be a conceivable way to do that.
Do you remember the Mark III
No, Mark III.
system?
No, I was not here for Mark.
So the way it worked is we actually had everyone by default starting in the capital, and then we had a sort of volunteer pool. You would opt in to be part of a sort of settler group, and every time we'd settle a new city or every time a new province was established, handful of names would be randomly picked from the volunteer pool to move there.
So my concern with that is it would work if we do one civ, but if we do more than one civ, that won't work.
But yeah, but
Look,
I'm just that's how it
no,
works.
I mean that makes sense. I don't think there's a. I think that it'll probably be a good starting point because I don't think there's enough support for more than one civ within the community to make it happen. To be honest with you, I think me and you, Masenko, are like the only two people that actually like that idea.
I really don't think it's that feasible.
Honestly,
but it would be nice to see for a spin-off. And I'm certainly okay with the idea of people doing variations of Democraciv, but I think we do need to kind of stay, in some ways, on the beaten path for the game, especially if we're trying to draw in new players. And the thing that makes it more complicated is a concern in that regard.
don't get me wrong. I love the idea of multiple. I actually really love the idea of a multiplayer democracy where you have several different governments all playing the same multiplayer game. You can have the monarchy constitution over there, and you can have the representative democracy over here. I I've sort of shifted my view. I think we should do just one civilization personally this time around, but I think future marks you can the population we have.
If I could just play devil's advocate, I think that where multi-civ causes some problems at the surface, when you start to think about what it clears up, I think it actually is beneficial. And what I mean by that is that, like, no more do we have to worry about what the provincial governments actually do, because they have tangible things that they can do that they can affect. We don't have to worry about the system, the system of, like, let's say every city gets a governor or a mayor. Then we don't have 16 mayors in the game. In the game, I think that it like I said, at the surface, it seems like it adds complications, but when you start to, and certainly it does, don't get me wrong, but when you start to really, like, look at what it also clears up, I think the benefits kind of outweigh the negatives on it. But that's a conversation for another time, and like I said, I know that probably won't happen. So
Completely agree. I completely agree with you. I think it brings a lot of benefits. But I also just don't know. I'm scared about the manpower right now because that does require a decent chunk of the population to just kind of split in half in order for something like that to be supported. But you know, right?
yeah, I think that's everything.
I love your eating espresso. It's really nice to hear.
That's not eating.
Whatever that
That's
noise is.
pulling tape off of a box.
That's such an odd thing to be doing right now, espresso. Hey, did you ever get that graphics card I had you set up? That's good. I'm glad. It just made me think of that.
I did get it. Yes, Sean is the only person who has my personal address.
I actually don't think I do anymore, so don't worry. Hey, it was so I could send you a...
You could have used it as a blackmailing tool, Sean.
Hey, give me everything I want in this constitution, or I release your address to the public.
I give it to certain people in the government.
Yeah. No, I think I deleted it, to be honest, because I felt weird keeping people's personal addresses.
Well, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't do anything nefarious with it.
You spite me enough.
Well, I'm not interesting enough for people to do nefarious things to me.
If it was certain people, I might. Like, I can think of a couple people that I would send to Hitman after if I could. Fucking Masenko, Blonde Hog.
Hitman after me in years.
It's been a year since I've been attempted murder. So I think to close this out, I'm going to read you a short story from my daughter's book collection.
Please do. That sounds amazing. Can we just end every stream with this? Like, ever? Any governmental meeting has to end with a reading from Please, it will make me so happy.
So for today's story, I've chosen Coco, a family mystery. So if you haven't seen Coco, it's that little movie about Dia de los Muertos. It's fantastic.
Love that movie.
Miguel Rivera lives in Mexico with his big family. Mama Coco is his great grandmother, and Miguel loves her. Before Miguel was born, the Rivera home was filled with music. One day, Coco's papa left to play music all over the world. He never came back. Coco's mother, Mama Imelda learned to make shoes. That's weird wording, huh? To help her family. She has one rule. No. I just want to say I'm genuinely shocked nobody stopped me yet.
Your microphone
Miguel's
stopped you.
abuelita.
Yeah, your microphone keeps cutting out.
Well, I stop when because I have push to talk on, so I stop when I have to turn the page. Hello?
Hey.
Huh. What all have you heard? Do I need to restart?
Oh, we can hear you.
Okay. Miguel's abuelita has the same rule, but Miguel has a secret. He does not want to make shoes like his family. He loves music. He sings and plays guitar for his favorite dog, Don. Ernesto de la Cruz is Miguel's favorite musician. Miguel knows all his songs and movies. He wants to be just like Ernesto. Miguel wants to play in a talent show on Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. That is when his family, in the land of the dead, gets to visit the land of the living. For Dia de los Muertos, the Rivera family puts photos on their family altar. In the photo of Mama Coco, when she was little, his papa has a guitar. It's Ernesto's. Mama Coco's papa is Ernesto de la Cruz. Abuelita says Miguel cannot play in the talent show. The family rule is no music, so she smashes his guitar. Miguel runs away. He needs a new instrument. He steals Ernesto's guitar. Suddenly, Miguel can see his family from the land of the dead. They are skeletons. His family will take him to Mama Imelda. Miguel needs a blessing from a family member. Then he can return to the land of. But Imelda's blessing comes with a condition: no music. So Miguel runs off. He meets Hector. Hector knows Ernesto de la Cruz. Miguel tells him that Ernesto is his own family member, and Miguel needs his blessing. Hector will help Miguel find Ernesto. In return, Miguel will bring Hector's photo to the land of the living. Hector paints Miguel to look like a skeleton so he will fit in. Miguel enters a talent show. Hector plays on stage with him. The talent show host says there is a family looking for. But Hector thought Ernesto was Miguel's only family. Miguel lied to him. Miguel thinks Hector will not help him find Ernesto. He throws Mama Imelda finds Miguel. She says that he must choose between family and music. Miguel does not want to choose, so Miguel finds Ernesto at his mansion. Miguel plays a song, and Ernesto is happy to meet his great-great-grandson. Hector appears. He finds Ernesto, and he and Ernesto used to be best friends, but Hector is not happy to see her. Miguel finds out that Ernesto stole Hector's songs and his guitar. Hector does not want anyone to know. He throws Hector and Miguel into a pit. If they are not rescued by sunrise, Miguel will turn into a skeleton. Hector used to write songs for his daughter Coco. Mama Coco is Hector's daughter. Hector is Miguel's great-great-grandfather. If Coco does not remember Hector, he will disappear. Mama Imelda saves Hector and Miguel, and everybody learns the truth about Ernesto. Hector and Imelda give Miguel their blessing to go home. Miguel sings Hector's song to Mama Coco. The whole family watches. She remembers Papa Hector. Music fills their home one. The Rivera family love each other, and they love music too. Music brings them all together. That's it, guys. It's over. I don't know why my
Thank you.
voice is like I'm watching my voice connection go from green to red.
Well,
I hate
thank
these,
you
the
for
way these
that
stories are
story,
written
but
too.
it was putting me to sleep. I just woke up.
Wow,
Beautiful.
it's reading on your own, step 3, so it's for like 4-year-olds. The movie's significantly better. I'm not gonna lie.
I have not seen the movie, so I will take your word for
You
it.
should. It made me cry. No, I mean, watch it. It made me cry.
That's because you're soft.
It's true.
You've got a kid, so you're soft.
I
You're
know.
friendly. Ugh.
I know. I'll pick a better one for next time. I had to find one because she likes to hide her books because she doesn't like when we read to her because that means we're putting her to bed.
Aww,
So I had to find one really quick.
that's actually adorable.
She thinks if she doesn't get a book read to her, she doesn't have to go to bed. But that's not the way it works. She just goes to bed without getting a book read.
Alright, well, I'm gonna close this out. So thanks everyone for participating. And are we all good for meeting on Friday about this time?
I'll be at work.
I should be.
I probably will be. I don't really ever have anything. So.
Alright. And Richard's got the day off. So we'll convene until Friday.
Perfect.
Right.
Yep. Have a